A few days ago, I posted what I thought was the definitive melee class reveal for Final Fantasy 6.0. And since then, you guys have blown up my comment section with a ton of really interesting theories and leads of your own. So I just wanted to revisit, as I kind of intended the first time, a lot of the further details that can be speculated about from the shirt hints that Yoshi P had given us this year. This here, on the left-hand side, neighborhood, and the hint at the top with the pseudo-Arabic script, is actually also not only a reference to a rock band, but a reference to a Japanese fashion designer company. And on their main webpage, if you scroll down just a tiny bit, you see this large image that plays. And this video is just a branding vibe, I guess, that allows you to get a sense of what the clothing is going for. But at the very end, there is an end credit scene that contains a series of slogans used throughout all of their products. Sometimes things will contain one or two of these, sometimes they'll contain like a lot of them, and there are a few pieces of clothing that contain quotes or mottos that aren't on here. However, these are the main pieces of branding that appear on the merchandise within Neighborhood's clothing line. There's a good chance that this class really just is Grim Reaper inspired, scythe wielding, some death or blood inspired class, but you know what, we're gonna dig through this even more because I think I found even more proof that it really is as simple as just a blood drain scythe class. I want to begin here with some of my newest findings. I wanted to talk about Xenos. There, I believe, is a very direct link between the shirts that Yoshi P is wearing and Xenos himself as a character in the Final Fantasy franchise. One of you had pointed out specifically that the song, the Sex Pistols' No Feelings, sounds a lot like Xenos. It's very self-absorbed, very self-loving, and it talks about having no feeling for anybody else except themselves. While I do see this as like a possible hint, I found it more useful to use that mindset with another song. Some of you may recognize my Google search here. On Yoshi P's center shirt, we had this text that said, "I'll be here if you need me," which has a Grim Reaper. At first, I just kept thinking that this was a reference to something more obscure. It turns out that this is actually also a song. And so the fact that this comes up explicitly when you type in these words makes me think that this is a direct hint. Now, this song, unlike the other one, is a love song for somebody else. The theme really does kind of fit how Xenos seems to view the Warrior of Light in Endwalker. No other NPC or villain or character in the Final Fantasy MSQ that gives off this vibe. As you guys know, Xenos, and I'll go over some screenshots later, but Xenos does have a new weapon in the new expansion, and it's more than likely, although not guaranteed, that this will be whatever weapon the new melee class is. He played Samurai in Stormblood, and I'm willing to bet he's going to pick up whatever weapon is released in 6.0 for the melee DPS class. Moving on, I also wanted to touch on, really quickly, another hint. The Filth and the Fury in the center of the shirt does refer to a Sex Pistols documentary. However, it also refers to a headline regarding the Sex Pistols by a newspaper called The Daily Mirror. I don't think it would be, like, any hints would be hidden inside of the actual article itself, but I just found that interesting that, you know, like the Daily Mirror really matches up with a lot of the mirror imagery I see in other hints. In the song No Feelings, the first set of lyrics is "I've seen you in the mirror." The entire 6.0 expansion is about this mirrored identity between Zodiark and Hydaelyn, as well as the people who serve both of them. I thought that's interesting to see that imagery pop up a lot, but that's not nearly as concrete. What I want to share next is something a bit more solid, and this is where I think the weapon is confirmed to be a scythe. So, a few of you had brought up that in Final Fantasy XIV, we have just recently seen the release of, I think it's Seiss, or like Siche, I think it's Seiss's hair, in Final Fantasy XIV. This here is called the Rainmaker hair, and it was just released, I think, in 5.4. I think it was 5.4. So I think this is a pretty direct hint that the next weapon is going to be a scythe. I know they pull from previous Final Fantasy content quite a bit, but it just seems like the timing is just perfect and on the right character. Now, I know a few of you have mentioned that the weapon could also be a hammer, or that the character could be a geomancer because of all of the rock bands. It's possible it could be both, where you're using a hammer to knock up earth and smack enemies and stuff like that. I don't think it's as obvious, and I feel like with the way that Yoshi P's hinting, there's too much to go on about a Reaper-esque vibe to really... I think there's too much going on with a Reaper-esque vibe to give any credit towards the hammer theory, or even the... I know it's a joke to some of you, but the geomancer theory. But one alternative that I do want to consider is the astronaut. Are we going to play fisticuffs with Xenos in space? Will Estinian backflip us to the moon? So, yet another hint from the Children of Bodom shirt. If you look at Children of Bodom in general, they do have a metal or rock vibe to them, but they also have an album called Follow the Reaper, which seems to be directly referenced from the t-shirt that Yoshi P is wearing. So, if we're looking for something simple, Yoshi P might be just saying, follow the Reaper. And if I had to guess, the only other Reaper here is, I'll be here if you need me, which leads me to my Xenos theory, which in turn leads me back to a Scythe class again. The Children of Bodom t-shirt seems to be most directly hinting at the album Follow the Reaper. If we follow the Reaper that's on Yoshi P's shirt, it leads us to the song I Will Be Here If You Need Me. This song seems to, in all of its essence, capture the Warrior of Light's relationship to Xenos, who we know is getting a brand new weapon in Endwalker. And this leads us to the final set of data that we can look at to see potentially what this weapon might be. I think that the hint about Scythe lined up with all the Reaper imagery, the Children of Bodom album saying follow the Reaper, the neighborhood branding that seems to say, you know, answers don't seem easy, and I'm wondering if they could be. I think it's likely that it's just what we see on Yoshi P's shirt. And what's nice about going through all of this research to reaffirm a conclusion is that it means it's less likely that we'll be caught by a red herring. This means that, more likely than not, the class is going to be what a majority of us seem to think it's going to be, and not anything that's way too off base, like with Sage. Let me know what you think below, if you agree or disagree, if any of these resources have led you to think of some new things in the Final Fantasy universe, or come up with new theories. Definitely share below. A lot of people are like reading each other's comments and giving feedback, so I'd be really interested to see if this topic warrants more research. Until then, have yourselves a great night, and thanks for watching.